Beyond.
Beyond.
Yeah.
Beyond.
Beyond.
Whoa!
Beyond.
No.
Beyond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See?
Anyway, it's
how it's done.
Beyond.
Can
It's
count on
still happening. We keep doing it every week, and it keeps on going. This train can't be stopped, though it stops once a week. When we stop doing it, we only do it once a week. It's not a continuous show. Anyway, this is episode 477. I'm looking at the wrong camera. Hey, everybody. I'm Max Scoville, and I'm joined by Brian Altano.
Hi.
Jonathan
I think you looked
Dornbush.
at me when you said Brian, but hi.
And Brian Altano.
Fun Day Mondays.
No, that's Marty Sleva.
What?
Anyway, yeah, so what's going on? We're going to talk about a bunch of stuff today. Resident Evil 7 is out. Yakuza 0 is out. Kingdom Hearts 2.8, is that out yet?
Kingdom Hearts HD 2.8 Final Chapter Prologue is out. Yes.
Oh my God, I'm so glad you're here.
We're just going to take short naps while you talk about
Feel
that.
free, yeah.
There's a bunch of stuff out there in the wild. You know, we got plenty of stuff to talk about. Let's start with Resident Evil 7. Raise your hand if you're brave enough to play that game.
If you're listening at home, a raised hand sounds like a swift wind of arms going up.
For the audio drama, that's the sound of a
Yeah.
hand being raised.
Man, I'm so happy we got this game.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
like it's such a triumph and a treat to get a game like this. We were really worried about this game, honestly, for a while, because I think like anything with the number 7 in is sort of like it's just not great. I think. Like,
What about the
Except
movie
for
7?
Furious 7.
Furious 7, Final Fantasy 7,
no, I mean like in terms
Seven
of like
Samurai, one of the greatest films of all time.
like,
Seventh Seal,
Okay.
also one of the greatest films of all time.
Seventh Heaven, 7 Minutes in Heaven.
Yeah, by the time games or even movies get to the 7th iteration, they
Yeah.
typically either reboot or rebrand or just drop the number entirely.
Yeah, I was
But-
actually pointing this out in the Podcast Beyond Facebook group the other day. Plug. You should join that. Episode 7 wasn't actually called that. It was called The Force Awakens, and only in the crawl did it say Star Wars Episode 7. Everywhere else, it just said The Force Awakens because I think they didn't want to go in with a lot of baggage. And when we first saw the reveal trailer for this game at E3 last year, and we saw it said Resident Evil, I was really excited. And then it said 7, and I was like, why'd you do that?
Yeah.
But it turns out that this game is a lot more new than I think the title would let it on to be. And I think that like before we even get into like how much we love it, I just really want to commend Capcom on the fact that like I've had a rocky relationship with them the last few years. I think gamers have in general. If you're a Mega Man fan, you've probably been upset or angry or just completely defeated by where that franchise is.
Wow, that took those waters started to rush.
It's just I'm starting to get sad. I mean, it's just been a rough few years, and I think like they've made some real bad decisions when it comes to the Resident Evil franchise in the past. It's been sort of all over the place quality wise, but this game is such an awesome step in a new direction for them. And I don't think it's like a sort of a reboot on the level of like say Resident Evil 4. I think it is in its own way just a fantastic step for the franchise.
And this could be your first Resident Evil. This is not, you don't need to know the baggage of 6+ Resident Evil games of lore that ultimately by 6 was out of control and dumb.
Yeah.
Like 6 was just straight up dumb and lost all the core tenets of the series. Whereas this, its main change is first person, which is the thing I was super worried about. I got over that within 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And realized like, oh no, this did keep a lot of those core tenets of inventory management, of puzzles, of exploring an environment, I think this has better enemies with more character in terms of the Baker family than any of the core villains in Resident Evil.
Yeah, and this is a franchise that has experimented with so many different perspectives. I mean, it started with fixed camera angles. It went on to fixed camera angles in pre-rendered backgrounds with Remake. There was an over-the-shoulder third person, a bunch of games in 4, 5, and 6, and Umbrella Chronicles. And then there was like light gun games and, it's been... there's been like third-person online first-person shooters, but this really feels like Resident Evil, and it feels like the first time I played Resident Evil back on the original PlayStation, and just that feeling of terror, that uncertainty of turning a corner. I'm playing it on PS4 Pro in 4K, and the way the lighting works in this game is so phenomenal. And when I think of like HDR, I usually think of like if you watch something like The Man in the High Castle, they shoot a lot of stuff on that show in HDR on Amazon Prime. It's basically like very brightly backlit. So you're like, oh my God, that guy's standing in broad daylight. It looks amazing. This is a very dark game tonally and just sort of like lighting wise. So when there are little peaks of light, when you see a flickering light bulb down the hall, it looks gorgeous. Like this game looks legitimately great on the PS4 Pro. And it's just really fun to play. It's like probably the scariest game I've played in a very long time. And there's not in like a consistently disturbing kind of horrifying kind of way, but there's just this like uneasy tremoring tension that is constantly happening in that game, where just even when I'm doubling back on areas, it's sort of in the way the first one, when you backtracked in the original Resident Evil and a dog jumped through a window for the first time, and it shook you to your core. Like games have been trying to do stuff like that for a long time, and I don't think they've really nailed it the way this one has been able to do that again. So,
kind of reminds me of like in Remake, the first time you enter a hall and the Crimson Heads are back. You're like, oh, this is new, this is different. And you have these little like sort of the estate in this game, the Baker estate, has these little sections that almost feel like the way that they prowl the sections, the Bakers, feels like little nemesis.
Nemesis. I was just going to talk about that. Like, I love the fact that you have stalkers in this game that sort of just like corner you, and then you get rid of them, and they come back because they're base of effectively like super mutants. I won't get into the lore too much because I think everyone should play this, but it is such a like the new setting. I think it just works so well too. Of like this like just this wet, gross house.
I was I played like for a second. Just I mean the thing leading up to the demo basically. You start out a car. That is probably the most realistic afternoon I've seen in a video game.
I really like that.
Yeah, it's kind of odd. I was playing it just on kind of regular vanilla PS4 with no special 4K HDR or anything, but just looking at it being like, this is exactly what I want to see in HDR. The use of lighting in it and the use of color it manages to be that kind of not quite the golden hour you get in movies, but that sort of like, oh, Twilight is just around the corner. Like night is almost here, almost that menacing like, hurry up and get your daytime stuff done feeling, which is something that it's a thing that I always think of like Sunday afternoons when I'm like, crap, I gotta go back to work tomorrow. Not that I don't like my job or anything, but you know, that feeling of like, oh, your weekend is dwindling, like that kind of winter afternoon or summer, you know, that it nails that time of day perfectly. And then you look over and there's like a pile of body parts and you're like, oh God, everything's going to get really bad. I'm like, I don't know if I play this game.
I think what I love about the horror in this game is that it's unsettling in a sort of non-traditional, non-sort of hokey way. There's something about it that like very much reeks of Texas Chainsaw Massacre to me, which when you watch that movie, the family dynamics for sure, but the idea of like if you were to watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre and then look at the motives for the characters and ask why, you wouldn't have an answer. And that's what I kind of love about the villains in this game, is that when you're playing a game about a ghost, it's like, oh, the woman lost and her life, and then her baby became. It's like
classic ghost story.
There's like the toy train that goes by and it makes that noise, and it's like dang dang dang, and you're like, oh great, there's that trope again. But this doesn't feel like that. This is just like, oh, a bunch of gross ass backwoods dudes want to eat guts at lunch, and because of that, they do mutant stuff to their buddies and their friends and sisters and crap. So. It's severely disturbing. I think it's like it's so awesome that we have this game. Like I'm gonna slowly crawl through it and then go back and play. I think specific sections in PSVR.
I imagine there's a lot of stuff that's buried in there too.
Yes, I'm sure.
Jonathan, are you a big Resident Evil guy?
Well, no, I've really only ever played. I started with the remake on GameCube. That was my first entry into it, and then I played a little bit of 4 and then a little bit of 6. But I haven't started this game. I played the demo and I played the demo in like VR as well. I cannot wait to start this game. And especially what excited me was you talking about how it sort of has this general sense of unease and tension to it. Like that is the type of horror that I love. I mean, I hate it, but I love it.
Oh yeah. Totally.
And that is what I am looking forward to. Like I don't need a ton of, there will be jump scares, of course, but like that is not the only thing I want.
You know, like when you're watching like the Blair Witch and they wake up that one day and there's just like piles of rocks. And you're like, well, that's weird and it's terrifying, but I don't really know why, because there's nothing, I'm not afraid of rocks. It's a stupid thing to be afraid of. This game does stuff like that a lot, where like you'll turn the corner and you're like, is that a leg sculpture? All right. Well, I don't like this hallway,
but I have to keep going, so I'll keep going. Yeah, that's
I think the puzzle elements are really smart too.
See, that sucks because like I really like puzzles and I like environmental stuff, but I don't like stuff that's legitimately scary.
I think you can build a tolerance to horror. I mean, the thing is, like, you appreciate
you live with a bunch of people.
Eat a bunch of pills or something. Yeah,
but you've been on like on a horror movie kick, and you appreciate horror designs.
Zombieverse.
Like,
so that's kind of I've always been like a big wuss. Like I've always been not good at being scared. Like I don't enjoy being scared, but I love monsters. And I love horror as like there's a lot of stuff, a lot of nuances to horror that I think are fantastic. And it sucks because Resident Evil is finally returning to being a proper survival horror game, and I'm kind of wishing it was the thing where they're like, oh no, it's a zombie shark, or like, oh, you've got to do this weird action stuff, or there's like a chainsaw man chasing you through a village. Like I kind of wish that it was this presentation and this execution, but leaning more in towards the campier side of things. And it sounds like this is not the campy side of things. This is legitimate, like, oh, go to the bathroom inside of your pants horror.
Yeah, I mean, the campiness comes through accidentally, I think, through like the character models and the acting a little bit. It's still a little like kind of wooden at times. And
I mean,
some of the models actually look sort of puppety at times like that. But I think that we've all been gushing over PT for years now and how we'll never delete it and how we've got to bring it from system to system. But I think that this is exactly what we were looking for in that game. Like, honestly, I think that sort of like there's a mystery here, but there's layers to it. And I think people are going to be pulling stuff out of this game for a long time.
Yeah, the opening 20-25 minutes is definitely like heavily PT inspired.
Yes.
And then it sort of finds this really great balance of PT/horror games in 2017 plus some of those core elements that we really loved about the original Resident
I think the video cassette angle is brilliant.
Yeah, and you get a bunch of those throughout the game that are sort of optional that give you a lot of backstory and sort of teach you about the mansion, certain secrets.
Like, I think it's a genuinely brilliant and horrifying loop to find a videotape, play it on a TV, watch what happens to these characters, see how they open up a certain door a secret way, go in yourself and be like, when's the other shoe going to drop on me? Like, I just saw those guys bite the bullet and what's going to happen with me. It's really, really cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. Resident Evil as a series is like, it showed up right when I was first kind of getting into more adult games. And there was that kind of initial thing where I looked at it and I'm like, oh, it's scary and it's a frightening thing and that's about it. And then as I've gotten older, I've been like, oh, it's got the guts of a puzzle game. But there's like, and then there's kind of the, the mechanics of action. It's not like it's unfair. It's just like, resources are sparse and you have to kind of like think on your feet, and it's, they do kind of have clunky controls. But in this case, I'm excited about getting to the point where it's less just wandering around with no weapon, where you're actually kind of like, where you have to fight something. Like, I'm curious about fighting a boss in this game. And it's interesting because there has been that sort of renaissance of horror games lately, like Amnesia and Outlast, where you're not really fighting anything. Like you're not kicking anything. I mean, Alien Isolation to a certain degree,
right?
Where it's like, and it's kind of cool to see Resident Evil kind of circle back and be like, hey, we kind of invented survival horror where you're limited in what you can do, but here's something that still limits what you can do, but you can do something. You're not entirely powerless.
And it does that really great way of like, do I run past these enemies and conserve my ammo, or do I stand my ground and fight? If you stand your ground and fight, you can get headshots and you can take them down in a couple shots.
Yeah.
But you're also like, well, I know bosses around the corner, and these bosses are like hard as hell. So like, do I want to save it for that?
Which I love, and I love the saving system is very evocative of the old typewriters.
Yeah. You have the item box. You have sort of light crafting where you choose whether you want to craft first aid spray or whether you want to craft bullets.
Yep.
I don't understand how you're crafting bullets.
Yeah,
don't worry about it.
I mean, you gotta have you have to sort of leave your logic at the door with a thing like this.
Yeah,
you didn't take that class in high school.
I didn't actually. No, I took line dancing because Wisconsin.
Yeah, I can see that being more useful.
Fair enough
than bullet crafting. Yeah, but I'm sure we'll have we're only a couple hours in, so I'm sure we'll have a lot more impressions next week.
Marty, you went to Japan.
Konnichiwa.
Why did you go to Japan?
I got to gozimasu.
This is your big secret trip. You've been
secret trip.
You've been keeping this a secret for a while.
Dojinshi.
Stop it. I don't know what those mean. Caleb Lawson and I went to Tokyo, to Shinagawa, which is one of the wards in the city, because we got to go to the sort of grand opening of Kojima Productions, which was super insane. And there was only two other, it was like, I think the BBC and Famitsu were there. So that's weird. It's sort of a weird trio right there. Huh. Yeah. And then we all
the
kissed.
big three.
Weird. Not all kiss.
Really?
I didn't actually see any of them.
Not the BBC.
Not the BBC.
They're very proud.
Mitsu would give that kiss a 10 out of 10 out of 10 out of 10.
But the office space is I visited a lot of Japanese office spaces, and for the insanely creative games that come out of them, they're very sort of Spartan and almost feel like a hospital with like harsh overhead lighting.
Yeah.
And it just feels like if you walk in those rooms, you're like, I don't know. Maybe they're doing finance in this room.
Right there, I think the culture is very minimalist. It's weird because when you play the games or you watch like anime, you see any of that, it's just like yeah. And then you get to their actual office.
They're all very reserved and they're wearing button-up shirts,
on the walls.
khakis. Yeah. But we know from we've been sort of following Kojima and Mark Cerny's worldwide tour of touring all these different office spaces and what inspired him, and finally, ultimately, we got a PSX landing on the Horizon Zero Dawn engine, a sort of modified version of that for Death Stranding. But yeah, going to the actual offices, you enter, and it's a very minimalist white room with a glass wall that has trophies and like the awards he's won from Death Stranding and like the trailer and the reveal.
I love that. There's already a trophy case for a game. It's not even like
two of them were IGN awards.
Really?
Yeah.
It's not even a thing yet.
Yeah.
I love that.
I like pointing at the other awards. I was like, just throw these away. Just
Yep.
and it just has this podium, and I was like, I don't know how we actually enter the office. And if this is the office, this is a 2-person studio, with no desks.
Right.
And they tap the ID card on the podium, and a wall opens up, and then it's a 75-foot. Just the brightest hallway, and it's illuminated. The entire ground, both walls and ceiling are completely illuminated in blinding light, and the only object in the room is a 6-foot-tall Ludens statue.
Oh my god, that's so cool.
Does it do the panel thing that he did at E3?
We're able to do the panel thing. There's various settings on the room.
No way.
And the way they described it was like they wanted this to be sort of a decontamination chamber / womb, to where you are leaving behind the sort of noise and steady life of Tokyo and cleansing yourself before you enter into the creative space where Death Stranding, assumingly, future projects are going to be developed. So that room's terrifying.
What a madman in the best way possible.
Yeah.
You're describing this room, and I'm thinking of the room that Mia Jovovich goes in the Resident Evil movie that has all
that was the very first. I was like, oh, the lasers are going to kill me. I'm not very agile.
Yep.
I did not take tumbling. Line dancing will not save me. But then you enter the actual office space, and it is very clear that he was inspired by Western developers. Specifically, it reminded me of the office of Sony Santa Monica, of Bungie, these sort of giant, warm, open, communicative spaces. So it's one giant room with a ton of desks. I think they said ultimately they want their studio to be under 100 people. So they're very much considering themselves indie, which you're like, 100 people, that's a lot. But you're like, well, no, when you look at the credits of a game, like any Ubisoft game, it's well over 100.
I mean, look at the credits of Metal Gear Solid 5.
Yeah,
right?
seriously. And it's just
What are you talking about? That was written and directed and produced by Hideo Kojima.
That's it.
It says it every 4 screens.
seconds.
Yeah.
And so it is one giant room. They have their own sort of an offshoot with a light mocap studio. They have their sound room. They have this giant, really open kitchen sort of meeting area where the whole thing that he said in the interview was he wants to promote communication and he doesn't want there to be middlemen. And he wasn't like calling out Konami or anything, but he was very much like, I've worked at places where communication breakdowns have caused massive delays and problems. And he's like, I want any member of the team to be able to walk up to any other member of the team and start talking. And that's what this room promotes. And there are only 3 quote-unquote offices, and it's him, the art director, and the producer. But the offices are completely glass-walled, connected to these things, and it seems like the door is always going to be open. And so we entered his office, and it is almost a collage of inspirations from every medium. He had this giant coffee table Kubrick book, a giant coffee table Taxi Driver book. He was listening to the La La Land soundtrack. He had Legos built in the form of one of the Robo Dinosaurs from Horizon.
Oh, that's so
He had
cool.
a TIE fighter on the side. So it's just
Do you think that sort of office flow is kind of a big middle finger to the fact that Konami didn't let him see his own team for 6 months?
Honestly, yes. Like by secluding him away, he's like, I never want this again.
Yeah.
Did you ever see Konami's his studios with Konami at all? Okay, so I did, and I can speak to this a little bit. What was really interesting is I went to the Tokyo offices of Konami when I checked out Ground Zeroes with Mitch, rest in peace.
Not dead.
Yeah. Still, Mitch Dyer is not dead in spite of what his last name might say.
He's Canadian, so actually he might live longer than any of us.
True. Anyway, we went to Tokyo to check out Ground Zeroes, and it was a weird trip because the first part was basically like, oh, let's give you a tour of like Konami's offices, and they're very, very very cold. Like, I mean, it makes sense. Basically, not a lot of none of the doors have windows on them, so you don't know. You could be walking into a supply closet, or you could be, and it's to make sure that people aren't, doing industrial espionage or just poking around too much. But it's also kind of misleading to be like, oh, here's like a long hallway with just blank doors or they're written in Japanese. I don't know what the hell anything says. And then, we get into the area where, Kojima's kind of studio was. And it sounds kind of more akin to what you saw. It's still cubicles and everything, but, it wasn't kind of separate offices for each person working. And he had his mocap studio. And then there was this entire giant sort of research area. One thing I really loved was this was when they were first working on the Fox engine. Yeah. And it wouldn't surprise me one bit if they had a similar thing there. Basically they had a room that they kind of chose to be their they rendered the room exactly 1-to-1 in the Fox engine. Yeah. To use it as kind of like a white balance or like
they 100% have that. We've seen that with Guillermo del Toro's model.
Yeah.
With like the tank is in an office room with a bunch of controls and stuff on it.
Where they're like, here, we know exactly what the lighting in this room looks like. So if we can kind of create it perfectly in game, then we have like a good kind of it's a good calibration test.
I mean, I've watched like every episode of Hannibal, and if you showed me that Mads Mikkelsen model, I'm like, that's completely spot on.
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing that that he is such an abstract and bizarre and insane director, but he's also striving for realism probably harder than almost any other game developer is right now.
Yeah. And hearing just sort of where the studio is, like they're staffing up. Like this game's a while away.
So what do you like if you were to just throw it out there, just total shot in the dark guess?
Fall 2019.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah. That feels safe.
Yeah. But hearing him talk, he said, so this is the first year of Kojima Productions was about assembling a spacecraft and getting it into orbit. And for that, he needed people he trusted, which is why he's working alongside so many of his producers from, Metal Gear, like people he's worked with for, years, if not decades.
Yeah.
But he said, year 2 is about hiring people that can take him to unexplored planets. And it's hiring internationally. It's hiring people who don't even necessarily speak Japanese. It's hiring people who don't even necessarily work in games. He's like talking about sculptors. He's talking about people from film. And he said he's hiring people that don't know who he is or who his games are. Yeah. But he like appreciates their work and sits down with them and talks about the vision. And they're like, okay, yeah, I'm on board for this.
I love that because I mean, I think he's obviously very clearly been influenced by film for the longest time. And that's what good filmmakers do. Yeah. You don't hear about that a lot in the games industry. You hear about people sort of like hiring the people that they know and their friends and stuff like that. But that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So what does it feel like there? Does it feel like they're on the precipice of like the next step? Does it feel like they're in the middle of making something? Like can you get a sort of vibe of what the level is right now?
Completely, like a complete guess. It feels like there is a skeleton there, and that they are now ramping up hiring to start putting flesh on it.
Right.
And the other thing I felt was just extreme optimism and extreme trust in his vision, and vice versa, him having extreme trust in the people he's bringing on, both in Tokyo as well as, in the sort of Amsterdam annex at Guerrilla.
It's got to be sort of just, I mean, we've talked about this a lot, but this is just an enormously gratifying feeling for him to just get away from the baggage of years and years of having to be under... basically be signed to a record label that wouldn't let him put albums out.
We also he released a statement that we have on IGN that sort of for the first time addresses Konami, and he doesn't address it with spite, but rather he says like, I'm grateful of everything over the course of my career, including Konami. Like without all of these things, I would not be where I am, and this is like the most excited I've ever been in my career.
I think for spite they send out Guillermo del Toro.
I love that. He's just like the hype man on the side.
Yeah, it's awesome. So check out. We have a full video feature sort of chronicling a bunch of footage. Interviews with Kojima and other members of the team.
And you guys got to connect on La La Land.
Yeah, which was awesome.
Was great.
Yeah, which is amazing. That was my favorite movie of the year. It's been, if you follow him on Twitter, he's obviously quite obsessed with the movie.
I think that's what I love about Kojima following him on Twitter is that when he locks in on something, like he doesn't let go. When you can tell when he likes something, he's one of those guys that like I had a friend in high school that was a big Resident Evil fan, and he bought every copy of the game in every region. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, that's nuts. Why would you do that? And he's like, I'm a collector. Like, I just love, like, they all have different art. They have different packaging. They have different, like, idiosyncrasies. And, you can just see, following him on Twitter, he's like, I love La La Land. I'm going to buy everything La La Land. Like, posters, books, DVDs. Like,
he was the same way when Fury Road came out. He said he saw it every day it was in theaters.
I think he said...
That seems a little... Spookus?
He just tweeted
haven't
the other
done that
day
with La La
about how
Land?
he saw the black and chrome edition, which is the Mad Max Fury Road, where you it's just all in black and white.
yeah.
And he was like, I think this is my 27th time seeing this. And then he tweeted a picture of him eating lunch in black and white, and he was like, Hideo Kojima, black and chrome edition. And then he tweeted a picture, not to just read his tweets without actually reading them, but he tweeted a picture of his coffee cup, and he's like, this coffee, like the mug was black or was white, and the coffee was black, and he's like, this is black and white, but you can taste the colors, and it's like, all right, okay,
Yeah.
you got some,
right.
you got a medical marijuana.
Yeah.
Your game is called Jazz Cigarettes. We got it.
No, I'm excited. I'm excited
He's awesome.
to like
Yeah, he's great.
see him make something weird.
Yeah.
I mean, weirder than he's already made, because it's like, we don't know what the hell this game is about. It could be about anything. It could make no sense on purpose.
Yeah, I think that like
Go figure.
that's the really interesting thing about this. If we look at his last two projects, it's PT, which is incredibly tight and personal, and it's about this hallway, and Metal Gear Solid 5, which is massive and spans multiple continents. And
Yeah.
But it's also a follow-up to, a 25-year-old series,
Yeah.
30-year-old series.
so I
Whatever.
wonder which direction this will go. Like
I'm really curious if because we know he has the keynote at RTX.
Yep.
Yes.
In RTX Sydney, which Greg's gonna be moderating. That's I think next week.
Oh, yeah,
super
that's right.
exciting. So we're gonna get more out of there. So I'm really curious if at any point in this development they're gonna sort of go dark, or if they're gonna, in something that is not very Japanese in terms of development, sort of keep the door open and keep a two-way line of communication.
Well, I mean,
yeah, I'm interested in that.
Yeah.
it's Japanese games absolutely put out tons and tons of information to the point that I think that if you compare something like, I don't know, Final Fantasy 15 with GTA 5, like the amount of information drops, like we had a decade plus worth of bits and pieces of Final Fantasy 15 to the point that you're like, where was that? Where was this? And I mean, I beat Metal Gear Solid 5 as much as you can beat that game, and there's one major thing, like there was stuff in the trailers leading up to that game that was pretty much showing the end of the game, like showing stuff from the final cutscenes, or as far as they got. And there's like one thing in there that was right kind of in front of us the whole time that was modified in the trailers. Like there was a thing that was switched around. So like, and PT is very much like this too. And we saw this with like the fact that the Phantom Pain was originally like this mystery game made by like a Swedish mummy who like, hung out with Jeff Keighley. But I like the idea that he understands that in this day and age, the narrative isn't just what's in the package, it's everything leading up to it.
Yeah, the conversation leading up to it. Yeah.
So I mean, if everything we've seen so far of Death Stranding isn't actually in the game, that's fine.
And I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah.
If none of this relates to what it is.
All we know is we play as Norman Reedus in what I assume is a third-person game. The end.
Yeah, we don't know anything.
Maybe. I mean, yeah.
All I know is that vague thing. Maybe.
You might play as the baby.
Yeah. Anyway, speaking of things from Japan that are confusing for some of us, Kingdom Hearts.
Drop that title.
Hello, Kingdom Hearts HD 2.8 Final Chapter Prologue is out.
How do you have a
You think you're
final
gonna say prolapse?
It's such. It's amazing.
Final chapter. Okay, what?
So it's comprised of 3 things that all have different titles.
Are you
as well.
drinking out of a Kingdom Hearts
I am
mug?
Drinking
drinking out of
heavily?
a Kingdom Hearts mug. Dr.
Oh,
Pepper,
God.
that heavy Dr. Pepper.
Okay.
I don't know which is my
Dr.
camera.
Pepper HD, 2.5 nights and 42 moons.
Diet.
Okay. So what's going on with Kingdom Hearts?
So Kingdom Hearts 2.8, the easy way to refer to it, is basically, like its title suggests, is the lead up to 3. It gets you the furthest point in the series back in time, as well as the most recent thing that you need to know.
And in theory, this is the last thing before.
In theory. There's also a collection coming out in March, sort of to celebrate the anniversary of the franchise.
Oh, good.
collects
That won't
everything
confuse
else.
people.
No,
buying
not it. It's
things.
called Kingdom Hearts 1.5 plus 2.5. So
That's
Enjoy that.
That's 4.
So they know what they're doing.
yes,
then.
they know. They have to know.
They know that they're messing with people like
Yes.
me.
Well,
Okay.
before 2.8 came out, there were all these rumors that it was going to be called 2.9.
So
My theory is there's still a 2.9.
I love that we have this going on at the same time as the Final Fantasy franchise, which
Yes.
start every time you turn that game on 15, it was like a game for beginners and old friends and all that stuff. And this
Yes,
one's just
yeah.
like, hey, are you new? Go away.
Yeah. No, 2.8 is not for a newcomer to the franchise. Like,
Okay.
you should not play 2.8 if you've
as your
never
first
played.
game.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
you
Well-
should play the collection coming out in March.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was going to be my next question
Yeah.
because I've never
Which comes out after the prequel.
Yes. Yeah.
But this is
before-
also
but
the
also
sequel.
the sequel.
So do you play the one in March and then play this?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Have you played all these?
I've played every single Kingdom Hearts game
Okay.
multiple times. Every time it comes out. I've spent too much time on this.
So how does this one?
I
So-
guess like break
I don't
down
know
just
what
the
the
three
word-
things.
So the three things, the one of them is sort of a 60-minute to 60, 70-minute film called Back Cover, which is basically the furthest point back in the series. It tells you kind of how Keyblades came to be and this huge war that's been alluded to throughout the series.
last time I was in a hotel room, I bought a film called Back Cover.
Probably a different film.
Yeah.
Just going to throw that out
Yeah.
there.
All right.
The second
This is
piece
sex movies.
is a
Thanks for
remake of
explaining
a 3DS game
Put
called
that
Dream
Keyblade
Drop
away.
Distance.
Dream Drop Distance.
Yes.
I remember that one because I'm bad at saying it, and in my job, sometimes I have to say things into a
and over.
camera, and I've definitely had to stop doing my job to say that name right
Dream
again.
Drop Distance.
Dream Drop Distance.
Yes. There you go.
There we go. I
Got
did it.
Which was the furthest point in the timeline up until 3.
And that was
the most recent.
that was a 3DS game.
Originally
that came
a
out,
3DS game.
That was like 2012 or so?
2012. Yeah, that was
Okay.
the 10th anniversary.
That's
See,
one of the
I pay
games that
attention.
used the Frankenstick because the game played better with dual
Yeah, with
analog
the,
sticks.
the extra circle pad.
What Kingdom Hearts 2 came out what 2006?
Yeah,
Okay.
the original came out in 2, and then 2 came out in 6. Yeah. In
It comes
06,
out in upside
excuse
down
me.
question marks.
I love how this
None of these
confusing-
numbers make
this
sense.
confusing ass timeline somehow centers around Goofy and Winnie the Pooh. like,
I mean, it's
And
such
it's
a,
wonderful.
amazing.
It's so wonderfully
It's-
perverse because, like,
Yeah.
when I
Yeah.
think of the most entry level, casual, intellectual properties, I think Disney.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, short of like Play-Doh. Like, I don't know if, and that's not even characters. That's like a
Play-Doh or
Just the-
Play-Doh?
Plato?
not Play-Doh.
Yeah.
Play-Doh. Like the
Play-Doh's very
like
easy
the
to
pink
get into.
stuff that if you eat it, it's not going to kill you. Like, it just tastes bad.
Toxic spaghetti.
But yeah, like Disney is like, I'm like, I once enjoyed a fine game called Mickey Mania where Mickey Mouse jumped on things and threw marbles. And then they're like, guess what? You have to play a game with decimal points in the title.
yes.
So
sorry.
So for hardcore Kingdom Hearts fans, which
Yes.
you obviously are one, is this something you absolutely should play?
So the third thing.
So yes, that's the third part is something you should play. I would recommend waiting till it's a little cheaper because it is really only a 3-hour or so experience. But Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep 0.2, a fragmentary passage. That is the full title. You should probably just it's gonna be a while. That was only the first part of the title notes.
No.
So that,
Yes. Yeah.
that continues from the PSP prequel game released in I believe the late 2000s called Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep. It follows one of the characters.
Normal, regular title for a video game.
For a Kingdom Hearts game. That is you basically find out what happened to this character after that game ended, leading up to 3, and it is built in
It's
the Kingdom
aqua,
Hearts.
like
yes,
the water.
Good, I know that word.
it's built with the Kingdom Hearts 3 technology. So this is kind of our first actual glimpse of Kingdom Hearts 3 that you can play.
Okay.
and it's great. It's really fun.
So how much did you read up on Kingdom Hearts? Right? Is this the thing you have it in your brain?
No,
and
this
it's
is just in the back of my head all the time.
So like,
yeah,
if
this
you,
is just there.
let's say there are people who are like lapsed Kingdom Hearts fans, and maybe they skip Dream Drop
Oh, you
Dream Drop
crushed it
Distance,
the first
First
time.
time.
Triple D.
Ooh.
Yeah,
back cover.
Yeah. Stop it. Yeah. So how does it for somebody who maybe is just trying to get themselves like back into gear for Kingdom Hearts 3? Like, is it okay?
I think if you hadn't played Birth by Sleep, that part would still be confusing because knowing who Aqua is does matter.
Yeah.
The really essential games are Kingdom Hearts 1, 2, and Birth by Sleep. I think you can get by without really playing many of the others. There are bits and pieces you should know, but you can get by. This piece about Aqua in 2.8 is really great at sort of connecting the dots of those games and bringing you to, and it surprisingly brings you up to 3. Like, I don't want to spoil the ending, but I was surprised at how much it gets you to where 3 is going.
Yeah.
I suddenly understand what it's like to be a not a Metal Gear Solid fan and to hear somebody explain like, so anyway, the Sniper Wolf, if you get the Psycho Mantis and the fear, you're like, what?
I don't have like a lot of blind spots when it comes to the games industry. I've just been doing this for a long time and playing games on every platform for a long time. This is one of the ones where I'm just like, every time I'm like, let me like crack this nut a little bit.
Well, and as a fan, I get that. Back cover.
Back cover.
There are only 3 or so essential ones that you need to play for the story, but why I grabbed onto the franchise was because it hit me at this great time where, because it's Final Fantasy and Disney, it was kind of like I was right at that puberty moment.
Of course,
where
yeah.
I'm growing up and hitting, there's emo, but also Disney that I love.
Yeah.
So it really blended for me, and so I stuck to the story. But the story gets crazy convoluted and complex, and there are so many things you need to understand to get 2.8, which is why I think the collection coming out in March will be for newcomers. That's what you want to play to get excited for free.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you get into the one in March a lot, then there's all of this stuff to go back and dig up.
Yes, and really, I think that Aqua chapter that's built on the 3 engine is really the only essential of those 3, because the other 2 you still don't really need.
Yeah.
But this one it's fun also.
Yeah, I'm really excited to play that and sort of get a taste, because I considered myself a big Kingdom Hearts fan until Jonathan came
Then I
here.
walked in
Yeah,
the room.
Doesn't that suck when you're like, I know a lot about this thing, and then someone's like, yeah, did you?
Well, that was I was growing up, I was the biggest Star Wars fan I knew, and then I came here.
Yeah.
And I'm the 40th biggest Star Wars fan in that room.
I'm 41st.
Yeah, congrats. But yeah, I'm excited to see sort of the combat tweaks and enemy encounter design and just sort of how your character feels to sort of prepare myself for 3.
It harkens back to the bigger worlds that were in 1 and 2. You're fighting a lot more enemies at once, and they're more creative enemies. The worlds have more branching pathways to explore and get.
Which is what we've sort of gotten a taste of in the brief glimpses we've gotten of 3.
Yeah.
I'm stoked.
All right, Winnie the Pooh is back.
With a vengeance.
I don't even know if he's in those.
What
things.
a weird footnote to that
He's
segment.
always in those things.
So Yakuza 0 comes out today.
Yeah.
Has anyone? Any of you guys touched it at
Yeah,
all?
put a couple hours into it.
What's it? Is it cool?
Yes, it's awesome.
I got a code for this, and I'm really excited.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a prequel. It takes place in 1988 in pretty much Kabukicho, which was the in Shibuya, the red light district. Does such a good job of capturing the sort of madness, energy, grime, filth, and pleasure of what you would imagine a red light district in Tokyo in the late 80s would be.
Wow.
And so it stars the 2 main characters of the series, and this is your prequel introduction to them. But the thing I love most is, like, yes, it's GTA-ish. It's not like an expansive world, but it's a really deep world in terms of, like, there's just a lot of texture to each area. And the main story's fine. The combat's cool. It's Arkham-y. But the thing I love most is just the insane amount of things you can do that if you have to do A and B, there's a C, D, E, F, G. Like, you can go to a maid cafe. You can go play Outrun and Space Harrier.
Karaoke?
Yeah, you can go karaoke. You can go to you can go to a thrift store.
Does karaoke just switch over to like a rhythm game?
It just keeps doing different things, which is insane. You can get late night ramen. You can just roam the streets. It's so cool.
Okay, I'm really excited.
Yeah,
about
Max,
this.
I think you're gonna love
Yeah.
that.
I've always loved kind of like, you know, the GTA open world crime games and stuff. And Yakuza's always been one of those ones I've kind of like, my exposure to the series has been like GIFs on Tumblr or like weird screen caps. Somebody who was reviewing it was like, here's my experience with Yakuza 0 in 4 screenshots, and they were like 4 of the most incoherent, confusing screenshots. And
it was like you talking to a rooster, and you're
It's like you were talking to me about Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah. But it was like, what am I seeing? And I think I've seen like clips where somebody like, you know, bursts into a room and like drop kicks a schoolgirl out a window, and you're like, what? Like, I'm sure there's a context, but even in the context, I think it's kind of, you know, known for being sort of over the top.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm excited because this is, of course, a prequel, and I think, what is it? The one that's basically a remake of the first one comes out later this year.
Yeah,
they announced that.
Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah, but also 80s. Like,
yeah,
hell yeah.
it's a little. Visually, it's a little unimpressive just because this was originally a PS3 game. And so it's not like an HD version of a PS3 game. This is a PS4 game, but just keep in mind, it's like some of those early PS4 games that had versions on both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, really cool. Honestly,
I noticed it was doing
I don't know if I'm going to finish this, but I just love spending like an hour in this world.
It's doing a kind of interesting like depth of field blur to sort of mask the fact that the draw distance isn't what you would probably expect, but it kind of works in its favor. It's a weird
pollution.
effect.
Yeah.
Or it looks like when you're in LA and it's just kind of like hot enough where there's this weird haze.
Yeah.
Also, this game does not have autosave, so make sure you save.
Ooh,
Yeah.
man, good catch. That is a very good point.
Good to know. PS4,
Ooh.
So I'm excited to jump into that, and I think I just, if you give me a choice, like, hey, you can go to 1980s Tokyo and eat ramen late at night, or you can go in a messed up Louisiana mansion and get chased by black mold in VR, I think I'm going to do the former. So have fun with Resident Evil,
I
boys.
feel like no matter what the second choice was, you would have done the former.
Yeah, pretty
'cause
much.
you're Babby.
And
What
also,
do you mean a babby? I want to go to maid cafes.
I'll see you guys on the gummy ship. Kingdom Hearts reference. Thank you.
Shut up. Okay, For Honor is coming out in the sometime nearish future.
Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day.
It's 3 weeks away. And I believe the beta is Thursday or alpha beta.
Yeah, they've had a couple. They've had a couple that have been running for the last like month or so. So a lot of people have been getting their hands on it.
And I want to make a quick, not even an apology, because why would I do that? I'm an asshole. When I first heard about this game, when I first saw this game, I was not interested in it at all. It's one of those things where I was like, I don't really care about like Vikings and knights and samurai. It just seemed like the kind of game for people who hang swords over their beds. Like, I'm like, that's fun for you guys. You guys enjoy it. I wasn't into it at all. I know I'm just pissing off everybody today. I'm sorry, guys. Just let's sound.
What's wrong with swords above your beds? What are you supposed to do if
they can fall and hit you right in the nuts?
What if a wyvern comes in the night? How are you supposed to defend yourself?
Throw your Funko Pops at it. I was not interested in this game at all, and I played it for a couple hours today, and I had a really good time. It is a very, very, very difficult game. I want to put this in there right off the bat. This is a hardcore gamer's game. This is not a kind of game where you can just go in and mash buttons.
It's not Dynasty Warriors.
No.
Screenshots can look like Dynasty Warriors.
Yeah. I think that's what we all thought when we first saw it, because it's you're this guy and he's fighting waves of enemies at times. And to me, it feels like taking the best parts of Rise, the best parts of Dynasty Warriors, and the best parts of Infinity Blade, and crossing them with the sort of hardcore combo aspect of Street Fighter.
Yes, totally.
Okay.
And so, like, I went from being like, I don't care about this at all, to playing it, to being like, this is really frustrating, to being like, I'm really good at this, this is awesome, to repeatedly getting my ass kicked, to being like, I hate this more than anything in the world, I'll never play it again, to winning and being like, that was incredible.
Yeah.
Like the loop of like losing to winning and victory in that game is one of the most satisfying wins. Like just actually winning a fight, like holding onto your controller and gripping it and killing someone with a sword is immensely satisfying in this game.
It is able to handle that sort of moment in a big battle in like any medieval movie or like Game of Thrones, where like you feel like Jon Snow mowing down waves of people that don't matter. And that's when it feels like Dynasty Warriors. But then you get to that point where he sees, what was his name, Ramsey, whoever killed a bunch of his family members. And then you get to that moment where it turns into a fighting game, like a one-on-one, very personal, very strategic thing.
Which I think it does. Shadows of Mordor did it like.
I thought you were going to say shout out to Mordor.
Shout out to Mordor.
My new album, shout out to Mordor.
They did it in a much sort of more lighthearted way, where you'd be fighting a bunch of guys, and all of a sudden the guy would be like, "Whoa, you golly bolly bitty Bob," and then you'd have to fight him one-on-one while everyone else was like throwing bees at you and stuff. This game that doesn't have a man that yells at you.
I feel like that game had far fewer bees than you bring up.
No, there were a lot of bees.
No, I started replaying it on PS4 Pro.
A lot of bees. You can actually see more of the
PS4
bees.
Pro adds bees.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what you pay for. That's
DLC?
the power in the box. That's actually on the front. Forget it.
The B movie
So,
DLC.
yeah, I totally came around on this game, and I don't know if I'll stick with it like for months and months, but it's the kind of thing where like I think I played with a couple of people from work, doing 2-on-1 matches, doing 3 against like another army of people, and one of the things I really liked, which I don't think I've seen a ton of, is the environmental kills are really awesome. Like I learned this push mechanic, which you can basically like grab a guy and throw him, or just hold on to him and try to kill him, and there's certain areas where there's a puddle on the ground and it turns into a geyser, and you push a guy into it and it's like an instant kill and he just bursts into flames. Or there's like spikes on a wall and you're in the middle of a fight and you just throw a guy at it and he just gets impaled immediately. And you're like, this is awesome.
That sounds really cool. It's one of those like, environmental kills will immediately get me more excited about something that's melee based that I might not initially care about. Like that's what one thing that I loved about Sleeping Dogs, something I loved about Injustice, like the fact that suddenly you're not just like, it's not just this kind of odd like freestyle rhythm thing against another, avatar or whatever. It's suddenly you're in this environment and it actually makes a difference.
Yeah, I don't think we know much about if they're like I kind of checked out on this game. Is there a single player? Like,
yeah, there's a single player. There's a story. It has a villainess who's like a sorceress.
Because I'm really interested in that, because I love the mechanics of this game, but I want to play it on easy because I need it to be a little more forgiving. They sort of taught me, the tutorials teach you the rules of this game, and then you get into your first match and you start forgetting them because it's just so intense. That you're like, I forget how to block, I forget how to do this.
And one thing that's really cool about it is it's different than pretty much anything that's out on the market.
Yeah,
and especially in terms of Ubisoft, because when we play Ubisoft games, we're like, oh, we expect the Far Cry, AC, Watch Dogs sort of gameplay loop.
Where can I climb up on tower?
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say there's another game that's coming out that sounds kind of similar, which is Absolver. Which is another game where it's basically like, hey, so everyone knows what a fighting game is. Like that's one of those just meat and potatoes, basic ass video game genres. but what if you put it inside a larger universe? You know, what if you took these mechanics and made them, you know, part of something bigger? And that's a game where you're going around and fighting enemies and you make allies and stuff. And I'm really curious to see how these kind of grow communities around them, because we're at a point where, you know, games like the Souls series has taken something very simple, like, oh, you take a sword and you fight a goblin or whatever, and made it into this very like technical and, you know, nuanced and something that requires a lot of you know, finesse to make it work.
They're fallen knights.
Okay, that's fine.
Best fallen
So
knights.
we are doing a big video series soon. I'm hosting it, and I'm guesting with Alana Pierce and James Duggan here at IGN, and we're all picking a class, and we're going.
Lonzo and the Dougler.
Yes, that's exactly what no one has ever called.
Big old Bizzle and the.
So we're teaming up with a bunch of
those
different.
are the stars of
Saved by
Back
the
Cover.
Bell.
Let me get through this. We're teaming up with a bunch of different people from all over the games industry and YouTube, people like Harley Morenstein and Kinda Funny and The Completionist, and we're picking different classes. So there's samurais, knights, and Vikings. So I'm not sure exactly how that's getting divvied up, but I'm a Viking. I don't know why. I kind of like samurais more, but I had to play as a Viking all the
We
time.
had to talk about
The
this.
reason you're not a samurai is because you said samurais.
Well, boo!
Jedis.
Jedi is plural.
The last Jedis.
The last samurai. starring
samurais-
Tom Cruises.
Samurais is actually what it's called when you shortly you know, sum up what happens in a Kurosawa movie.
So look for that video series soon. I think it's going to be a big live stream. I think we're starting it on Thursday. So
Cool.
Look out for that.
Great. I want to talk a little bit about games that are coming out these days. They keep making them. There's like a weird drop in PSN game quality.
Yeah.
There have been notably there's a game that popped up called Life of Black Tiger.
Okay, so Google right now. Pause.
Yes.
Google
Whatever you're
trailer,
doing, yeah.
Leave the
Life
tab
of,
open.
of Black Tiger.
Yeah.
Yes.
Watch this trailer.
Yeah.
Now you're back.
Yeah.
And presumably you watch that on the official PlayStation channel. Like, this is a thing that Sony's being like, this looks fine, and putting it out there. And like, I think my old colleague Jim Sterling, who you know, frequently just says the thing that everyone's thinking and, you know, gets in trouble because of it. He went on record and was like, I think this is the worst console game I've ever played. And you know, he plays a lot of like Steam shovelware. And he was just kind of
legitimately looks like a PlayStation 1 game, maybe a launch PS2
It looks
game.
like a very bad Android game.
Well, that's exactly what's happening,
Yeah.
Max. I think people are dragging and dropping terrible iPhone games onto consoles instead of the other way around. And we saw like for a long time we were like, what happened to like the middle shelf or the bottom shelf in gaming? We saw these third parties go away in the last generation. Most of them moved to mobile. I think a lot of them are getting a little frisky and they're trying to come back to consoles with their trash they're making on mobile.
I don't know what's happening there, because like presumably the whole thing that like one of the wonderful sort of double-edged sword upside down sides is that you don't get as many weird kind of like, you know, bottom shelf things that you might get on PC with PSN,
Right.
And you have to pay for online, and it's, you know, not as powerful, but you know, there's a kind of a you know, quality filter there.
Yeah,
you know,
it's
you
one of
can
those
kind
I don't remember things like this existing downloadable on PS3.
No.
When I look back at like my cross media bar on my PS3 and see all the cool downloadable games I have from that game company and Pixel Jump
exactly.
games and buying a
Well, I think this is a sort of like an example of what happens when you make it easier to work with indies, right?
Sure.
You make it easier to work with companies, small studios who have an idea for a game. And I think it's awesome that like opening those doors let so many things in, but it's also you get stuff like this.
There needs to be someone who looks at this trailer and is like, no. And then there's this other game, Skylight Free Range.
This
2.
one,
I was going to say, if the Life
Yeah,
of
that
Black
one.
Tiger trailer made you sad and you need a good hearty har laugh, watch the trailer for Skylight Free Range 2, Gatch Doing.
Gakduin. Let's
could not stop laughing
this
at this.
this
thing.
looks like if PlayStation Home was developed by students.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like
yeah.
it looks like a bunch of just kind of very homemade polygon characters kind of floating around, and
If
it just
Second Life looks bad, this looks like First Life.
yes.
This is like what they tried to do first.
I
No,
don't,
it
I don't know
honestly
what,
looks like somebody lost a bet and made a game a 10-year-old pitched.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what Skylight Free Range 1 is, but Skylight Free Range Gakduin is rated M for mature and apparently has nudity and sexual content, but with these god awful like Fisher Price, My Little People avatars running around.
Yeah.
And
I
then
also don't like the word Gakduin. Like, it makes me
Gakduin?
say noises.
Yeah.
I don't know if
How does
this
this
was
not have Kingdom Hearts anywhere in the title?
That's actually a prequel.
but yeah, like it's I think it's great that it's more accessible for, you know, for smaller game companies to make games, but at the same time, like it also sucks that a game like this is being charged $15 and, you know, somebody jumps in the store and they're like, oh, I spent money on this.
So that's the thing that's really important to point out.
Right.
Like, a lot of these games aren't like cheap. They're not really free to play. Like
No. Yeah.
we and we'll talk about the next one, but I mean, some of these games go from $15 to $20 to $30.
Yeah.
And they are they're not even they're not even like functional sometimes.
Right.
Yeah.
Not like they're not finished or unpolished. They're like fundamentally broken video games.
Yeah.
We played one called Joe's Diner.
Oh my
we did a little
God.
bit for,
We haven't talked
for
about
up
this
and I think we'll probably have a Let's Play up on IGN today.
Yeah.
Basically, Joe's Diner, it looks fine. I think it's running in Unity.
Yeah.
It's visually, it's theoretically pretty good.
Yes.
It's basically a Five Nights at Freddy's ripoff, except instead of being a defunct bootleg Chuck E. Cheese, it is a diner somewhere in the Midwest of America, presumably, and you've been hired as a vacation temp. Like somebody went on vacation, you've been hired to take over the graveyard shift at this diner. What they don't tell you until you load the game up, and there's an unskippable cutscene that explains all this to you, is that Joe's Diner was built on Native American burial grounds.
Ooh.
Now, this is already kind of one of those things like, okay, this is A, been done to death, and B, kind of hard to do in 2017 without being horribly culturally insensitive. The good news is this was developed by Germans who probably maybe didn't do a ton of research into A, Native Americans, or B, Midwestern American diners.
They watched Poltergeist.
Or even just the food service industry in general.
Yeah.
So basically, you're in this diner and you have to walk around, and the entire game that we could glean from playing it a few rounds is you have to walk around and clean up the diner. Like, you have to take food off the table and put it in the trash. Weird part is I think it's all like Unity Store assets of food. So it's an entire cheeseburger or a full Slurpee, which they don't serve in 50s diners. I don't know why that's there. And take it and put it in the trash. But every time you do anything, it makes noise. And there are various devices scattered around the diner that turn on, like a phone will start ringing or the jukebox will start playing. And it's conceivably sort of spooky. You've got this meter, and as it gets louder, the louder it gets, the more likely the old ghost chief will come out and get you.
Oh,
and
I don't want that.
So you could think that maybe this would be an interesting thing where, like, oh no, if it gets too loud, the ghost is going to come and you have to hide from him.
And Don't Wake Daddy, the old boy.
Yeah, and this is all like first person, and it, like, again, graphically looks okay. You've got a flashlight, which they don't even tell you can turn on. When the ghost comes out, it is a clip art image of a Native American chief that flashes on the screen, and it says, like, you're dead or something.
It's like the thing that Lucky
ghost.
Kids found on Tootsie Pops.
Yeah. Like, if you die 10 times, you get a free bag of Tootsie Rolls.
Yeah.
But no, like, it works, but it's so bad.
And it's $20. It's
Again,
a third of the price of Resident Evil 7.
Yeah, and maybe we screwed up and there's some deeper narrative here or some incredible game buried away.
Yeah.
Maybe, but I don't
It's
really
just
think
racist
so.
frog fractions.
Yeah. Also, really weird part is there are like 99 slots for save files. This isn't really a game that you need to save a whole lot.
99 times.
I don't think you even can save like mid-round. It's kind of
Also,
odd.
if you're that good at saving, don't spend $20 on this game.
Yeah. Those are some bad games that are out there. You probably would rather watch people play them. I mean, it's kind of weird because there's a whole industry for that, people playing shovelware. If you want to check out a good game that's affordable, check out Hunter's Legacy. It's on PSN. It came out today. It is a little 2D Metroidvania where you play as a tiger lady. It's $7.
You could buy it 3 times for the price of Joe's Diner.
Yeah.
Exactly. I was screwing around with it. It's fun. It has a wonderful kind of hand-drawn art style.
Yeah,
It looks
really
a little
cool.
bit. It reminds me a lot of like Klasky Shupo, so like Rugrats, Duckman, Wild Thornberries.
Sure, what? I thought that was a slur.
Klasky Shupo.
I would stop that.
You didn't grow up on Nickelodeon, did you?
I did. I didn't realize who Classy Shupo is.
It was Arlene Klasky, Gabor Shupo. They did the cover. They did a cover of Frank Zappa's The Lost Episodes. Anyway, it's a wonderful little kind of hand drawn thing, and it's $7. So if you want to, if you want something that'll be a nice aperitif for when you're scared pantsless by the Resident Evil guys, you can play this cute cartoon cat game.
Keep your pants on.
Keep those pants on. Anyway, there's also
It's our
just
new tagline.
Save it for back cover.
it can be tempting to see something that's on sale on PSN, but maybe just check it out first because that's there's our little PSN PSA for you. Don't buy the Tiger game. Buy the Hunters one, not the Black Tiger one, because that's a phone game.
Great PSA.
Anyway, words is great. Tommy Tyler, to make them come out of your mouth. They're a whole bunch of sentences. Anyway, speaking of sentences, here's one for you. It's time for Rapid Fire. Rapid Fire is, of course, the part of the show where we answer your weird questions from our Facebook group, which is facebook.com/groups/podcastbeyond.
Groups.com.
Groups.com. See you in the cloud. Anyway,
We gotta go through these. We gotta do quicks.
Matt T. Garso
Real
says,
rapid.
which games in 2017 would best be suited for, or would you like to see have VR levels / experiences attached? And Paul Mastroianni said, what other big franchises do you think would benefit from VR modes? both kind of the same question, but it's a good question nonetheless.
I would love to see Horizon have some sort of like dino tourism mode, because I think that one of the coolest things that I've seen in VR so far was first the AT-AT in the Battlefront VR thing. When that walks by, that sense of scale. I'm looking up at that weird elephant's tongue. And then number 2 is Robinson the Journey. The dinosaurs in that game look awesome. So combine both of those beasts, and you have robot dinosaurs, and they would look really cool. So I don't know about like sort of like hunting them or anything like that, but at least sort of just like hanging out somewhere and checking it out would be really cool.
Yeah,
Spider-Man.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah. I like Batman Arkham VR is one of my favorite VR experiences that I've had so far, and the idea of it making you feel like that hero, I think Spider-Man is probably one of the ones that makes the most sense for that.
Yeah.
And there have even been games that are similar to a Spider-Man game.
Yeah, I'll plug this game real quick if you're looking for a Spider-Man-ish experience on PSVR. It's called The Windlands, and it gave me legitimate fear of heights. But it's about shooting ropes, and and climbing up to like really high areas and trees and collecting stuff.
Shooting
and
ropes and
swinging
doing
back down.
ropes.
Yeah, it's about swinging and shooting
Probably
ropes.
up a second.
Yeah. No?
What about you, Marty?
I think it'd be cool for, I mean, we're assuming Battlefront 2 is coming this fall. I think a more sort of robust VR component than the sort of X-Wing VR that we had in...
I told you what I want for that, right? I want, so you could unlock
like
those,
toys?
those toys, those like models that you can unlock.
Yeah.
I want those, but like action figures and blister packs that you can pick up and turn around and open up and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I like, there's this game Lucky's Tale for Oculus that's it's a 3D platformer, but you sort of are the camera. And I think that'd be really cool for like the Crash collection that's coming out. Sort of like be looking at those lanes and be able to sort of change your perspective and get up there. And
that would make it a lot
Cortex's
easier.
bundle.
I remember doing interviews before with the Lucky's Tale devs at E3 when they were like, "Hey, we're making a platformer for Oculus," and I was like, "But why? Isn't Oculus for scary things and first person?" And they were like, "Well, actually, it's a lot easier to platform if you're, we've all had that thing with a bad camera in the 3D platformer, but when it becomes almost second nature, where you can when your depth perception is no longer an issue." So that'd be kind of cool if that became sort of tacked on. I'm dying for the first game that just implements something where, whether it's like, whether it's Horizon Zero Dawn or, Ghost Recon Wildlands, something where they're just like, hey, you want to look around in VR? This beautiful world we've rendered? Like, if it's maybe sending up a drone and suddenly the drone is like kind of, stuck in one spot, but they're like switching to VR and you're like, whoa, I can see all around here.
Like a programmer technology for, again, PC for Oculus called Ancel.
Yeah, we've talked about that.
And you can like take a screen, you can like pause Witcher 3 and sort of just exist in the space and look around. And it's not a game per se.
There's a thing they just launched. I hope I'm not screwing up the name. It's on PSVR and it's like $10 and it's called, I think it's called Paradise. Did you see this in the store?
No, not yet.
And it's basically just like a vacation viewer where you can basically be like, I'm going to sit at the top of a mountain and just hang out. I can look around. I can pick different viewpoints and just kind of like be zen. Or I can go by this beach. I can go by this ocean. I want to see more stuff like that, but with recognizable game environments. That's a great idea.
It seems almost kind of just like a waste to create these, beautiful, massive worlds and just to not be like, hey, I don't know how much work goes into it. I imagine probably a stupid amount, but to just be like, hey, there's a, extra bonus VR feature where you can look around this world, right?
Yeah, and just explore. Like one of the best VR experiences I've had was Google Earth or whatever on on just a mobile VR, and I click to the top of a mountain and I'm seeing out from the top, and it's amazing.
Yeah, it's
Do
crazy.
that in actual game worlds.
I hope that comes to PSVR.
Yes.
So on that note, Steve Green said, with Sony closing studios that worked on VR and not restocking stores, are they trying to kill off PSVR already? I'm loving RE7 in VR, and I hate that Sony doesn't seem to be pushing this experience at all.
No, I don't think they're. I mean, they've committed too much to PSVR to pull the cord on it, and also with RE7 being sort of the first tentpole AAA established franchise game, and having it actually be super successful in VR, which I thought it would be nauseating in VR, but everyone who's played it loves it in VR.
Yeah,
Chloe preferred it in VR.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. I mean, the comfort options are incredible. I will say that PSVR's sort of felt a little muted at PSX. There were a few games here and there that we talked about back when we did that show, but all in all, I think they're in this weird pattern between like, we don't want to overpromise and we don't want to underdeliver, and we are sort of just like waiting to see how the market responds. But the problem is the market doesn't know what it wants until you tell them, and I think they need to get just a little bit louder on the bullhorn to sort of explain to people like, this thing is awesome, because it legitimately is. It's the most comfortable consumer-ready VR I've ever tried. It's just awesome. I mean, I got one. Max, you just got one. Like, it's a great toy. And it works so well with your PlayStation. It doesn't work well with your PS4 Pro, which is a different story entirely. Even though it makes things look better, I'm like quick tangent, I'm really annoyed by the fact that those things don't communicate better. That I have to when I play a game with HDR like Resident Evil 7, I have to unplug it. But when I want to try the VR mode, I plug it all back in. Like that there isn't a smarter way. That stupid breakout.
I think that's a thing in whatever the Gen 2 version of PSVR is going to fix that, which sucks for someone who got it at launch or close to launch.
Yeah, I mean,
like
I bought all of those toys and a new TV all within the span of like 2 or 3 months, and they don't communicate the way they should, and everything else does.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cumbersome. But that being said, I'm hearing that PSVRs are available in stores a little bit more now. They're starting to show up on shelves again. They were impossible to get for a long time. So if you want one, buy it. Go listen to our old episodes about how much we love them. I'll probably put together something soon. Maybe next week, Max, we can do a little thing about our VR.
I'll do some homework.
Give you guys a little crash course.
Yeah. Phil Mansfield says, will the survival horror genre ever get stale old?
Nope.
No.
I think we'll be fine. In the same way the horror film genre never gets stale or old.
I mean, with all genres in general, they come in waves.
Totally.
Things will get stale for a bit, and then someone will reinvent it in an interesting way, and that revitalizes everything.
Yeah, you'll have smaller indie things introduce new ideas and concepts that AAA games end up taking from and building on.
I just watched this movie, The Girl with All the Gifts, which I'm not fatigued on zombie stuff, but I'm at the point where it doesn't surprise me anymore. And I saw this movie, and it did what I think 28 Days Later did 10, 12 years ago, whenever that was, right? Yeah. So I think there's always room for it. If you look at just the last few years, the survival horror genre has changed immensely, become like a lot more sort of quiet and sort of less combative and more sort of sitting in the shadows and waiting. Experiential, first person stuff. I mean, the fact that we've seen Resident Evil reinvent themselves so many times shows that I think there's always going to be room to breathe there. And
speaking of Resident Evil reinventing itself, you should check out The Secret Origins of Resident Evil, which Zach Ryan, among many others, put together. It's this really great sort of crash course on the roots of the series, where it came from and how it got here.
Yeah.
Really good.
I had that question in there because I wanted to piggyback on it. Cody Becker said, what would an Oregon Trail game that was rebooted look like today for you? I think that would be a really cool survival horror game.
Yeah.
I would love to see survival horror leaning more into the actual existing horror, like be like, oh, hey, you're trying to flee a war-torn country or something, like a game where it's taking, I mean, we've seen all kinds of messed up stuff in video games at this point, but to see something that's like, I mean, imagine like The Revenant, but a video game.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you think about, I remember like playing Oregon Trail when I was a little kid in school, which was very odd because like you would sit down in front of like an old computer that was like, it was like an old Macintosh and it was black and green. And it would be like, your wife's dead.
Here's her tombstone.
And then,
that's not great.
And you like, if you hunted too much in one area, no animals showed up anymore. And you're like, there's something oddly dark and alarming about this game. But I think having that, like, running in the same engine that Death Stranding's running, and all of a sudden you go to caulk the wagon across the river and your children die. Like that would be hard to cope with.
Yeah,
an actual brutal survival game.
Yeah.
I mean,
when you get mauled by a bear.
Yeah.
Conversely, something like XCOM would work perfectly with Oregon Trail, where your friends are all dead because they won't stop crapping everywhere.
Or an MMO where you're all on the same trail and you.
That could be interesting. You come across
that'd be weird.
Don't Starve grabs some of those core tenets. Sort of anyway.
Also, shout out to the people making me an XCOM. I saw that in the Beyond group. And they're sharing that. That's really awesome.
Yeah.
Aviators on the battlefield.
It's night.
So on that note, that was Beyond. You can find us all on Twitter as always, and be sure to check out the Facebook group. What did I say? Facebook. Yeah, I said it.
Groups.com.
Yeah, go to groups.com. That's the one. You know where to find us. And of course, check out the Beyond YouTube channel, youtube.com/IGNBeyond. We occasionally put up extra little bonus things. Marty, you and I have been playing Skyrim together.
Yeah.
You're very bad at that game.
I'm real terrible.
Real bad at it.
I keep going into dungeons and getting too scared, and people are too good, and then I run away.
Yeah,
we've made very little progress for the dozens of hours.
We just became level 4,
but it's very fun to watch.
7 episodes.
As an unbiased
party. So hit youtube.com/IGN and look for the Welcome to Skyrim playlist. And then of course, we all do a lot of stuff. Brian, what are you doing these days?
Let's see. I mean, you and me do Up at Noon every week.
That's right. We do that show
on NVC. We got some cool guests coming to Up at Noon in the next few weeks, so we're working stuff out. Oh yeah, we can't announce that one yet, but we will soon. It's a personal favorite of mine.
Horatio Sands.
Kevin Kline
from that boat cruise movie is coming on. He's doing boat cruise too.
SNL.
You got Cuba?
Yeah, Cuba Gooding Jr.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's not really Cuba Gooding. We just booked a guy named Cuba Gooding Jr.
Over his peers?
Dornbush, where can people find you? What do you do?
You can find me on Twitter at JMDornbush. I write the news. That's all I got.
All right.
Also, Kingdom Hearts. Just more Kingdom Hearts.
You write the news for IGN.
You keep busy.
The news. I'm writing all the news.
It's late
very
Wednesday
busy
night
for me.
So your review is probably up of Kingdom Hearts?
Yes, yeah.
Cool.
Okay, check
Say that title one more time.
Kingdom Hearts HD 2.8 Final Chapter Prologue.
Beautiful. All right.
Back cover.
And of course, we're all on Twitter. I'm Max Scoville. Marty, you're McBiggity's, the 2 G's and 2 T's. Brian, you're Agent Bizzle, and you said you're JM Dornbush?
Yes.
Beautiful. Yeah, Beyond. That's it. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Beyond.
The end.
The end of the show.
Final ending prologue. The edition
0.0
is over.
2.5 stars
The end.
on iTunes.